Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about fractions. Woohoo! Fractions. Yeah. Today we are going to be talking about fractions. I know you're excited to talk about fractions. Here are just a few examples of fractions, and you might have seen them before in some of your work, but these are some examples of what fractions look like. Now, there are some very important vocabulary words that we will hear and talk about as we study about fractions. I want to go ahead and give you those two. The first one is the numerator. Numerator. That's the top number in my fraction. See my fraction right here? You might say, oh, that looks like 1/2. 1/2. Well, close. But the top number is my numerator. The bottom number is my denominator. Denominator. Can you say that with me? Denominator. There's the numerator on top, the denominator on the bottom. Now, it's very important because the denominator tells us how many pieces an object is broken into. The numerator tells me how many pieces we have. For example, if I take a piece of paper and I break it into 2 pieces, my denominator is 2. But if I'm only holding 1 piece, then I'm holding 1/2 of a piece of paper. A half of a piece of paper. So then I could write on it and I could say, well, here is 1/2. And guess what? Here's the other half. Oh, I have 2 pieces. And this is 1 piece and this is 1 piece. So my denominator, 2, tells me there are 2 pieces to the whole thing. But each one, this is 1. Here's another one. If I put them together, I'd have 2 pieces of the whole thing. And that would be the whole piece of paper. So fractions can tell us how many pieces an object is broken into and how many we might be talking about. So we're thinking about our numerator and our denominator. Now, I took a piece of paper earlier and I broke it into some smaller pieces. Now, this piece, this size that you see, is not the full size of the piece of paper. This is 1. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4. I have 4 pieces. Now, if I have 4 pieces of an object, and they're all the same size, they are an equal size pieces, then I could really say I have a fraction. I could say that this piece is 1/4 of the whole thing. Well, that means that each of my pieces are also 1/4 of the whole piece of my paper. Now, why do I have a 4 in the bottom of my fraction? Well, I have how many pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's all 4 of them. There's 4 of them. Now, my friend might say, well, here's half. There's a 2 there. That's a half. Like I had half of a chocolate chip cookie. Okay, it's not the whole thing, but it's half. But then somebody else says, well, I had a 1/4. But 4 is bigger than 2. Well, look at that. Which one of those is bigger? Do you want the half or do you want the 1/4? If you're really, really, really wanting that chocolate chip cookie, do you want a half or a 1/4? If you really, really want it, you want the half because you get more. But we think, oh, that 2 is a smaller number than 4. You're right. But fractions, friends, when the denominator gets smaller or gets a bigger number, the piece gets smaller. And we're going to look at that. So look at that. These came from the same kind of piece of paper. Here's a half. Here's a 1/4. If you want a big piece of paper, you're gonna take a half. Well, oh boy. All right, so here is my half. That's half of a piece of paper. And here is my fourth. And you can tell the half is a lot bigger. We're gonna set that to the side for right now. I have another piece of paper that I took and I broke into not fourths with 4 pieces, but these have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. I've got 8 pieces here. So if this one piece is 1 out of 8, I could say, and I could write on here, that this is 1/8 of the whole object. 1/8. And that means that each one of these is also an eighth. Now, let's think about our cookie idea. Let's say Susie wants to have an eighth of a cookie. But her mom says, well, would you rather have a fourth of a cookie? Which one's bigger? Ooh, an eighth or a fourth? That denominator's a bigger number now. But look at the size of the piece. Well, let's just compare it with the other one. Let's see if I can hold these together. There's my fourth. There's my eighth. And guys and girls, look at this. Here's my half. Wow. The eighth is really small. The eighth gets it really small, and so we probably don't want to eat an eighth of a cookie when we could have, you know, a fourth or a half. So fractions, ladies and gentlemen, fractions tell us the part of the whole. Let's go back to this paper right here. A fraction has a numerator and a denominator. The denominator is important because it tells you how many pieces the object has been broken into. So if it has a 2, that means there's 2 pieces. If this was an 8 pieces. If this was a 53 pieces. And the numerator tells me how many pieces I might have in my hand, or I might be talking about. Now, I want to show you with a circle where we can see the whole circle all together and we can see all of the pieces. So, let's say I have a red cookie right here. Here's my red cookie. If I have my red cookie, and it's already cut into equal pieces, because that's very important to have equal pieces if we're going to be talking about fractions. Let's put it all together. There's my cookie. There it is. Boom. Boom shakalaka. Now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. 8 pieces. So I'm talking about this kind of fraction, an eighth, with just this, with just this little bitty piece here. That's an eighth. Now, if somebody comes along and says, hey, would you like half of a cookie or would you like an eighth of a cookie? Look at those two. Look at those two. You'd say, I want the half because it's bigger. It's bigger. Now, here's my fourth. Here's my fourth. Here's my half. Oh, look at that. And then here's my eighth. Whoa. But then somebody might say, I broke a cookie into even smaller pieces. Here's a 16th. Let's see if we can fill up the whole circle here. Ooh, there's 1/16 that goes in there. Watch this. What if I put another one? Ah, fell down. Let's try this again. Here's my fourth and my eighth. And then I'll just take 2 of my 16ths because they'll stack better. But look at this. There's 2 of these. And if I put them on top, now I have a whole cookie. But what if somebody says, oh, I've got a 16th? That means there's 15 other pieces that are like this green one. Would you really want a cookie that small? When you could have an an eighth, or a fourth, or a half. Fractions can tell us how many pieces we have in the whole thing. That's why it's very important to think about our numerator and our denominator. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have some fun with fractions today, and I hope you can think of some great fun ways you could use them. Here's 1/2. This is 1/2 of a circle. Now a half, well, I could put 2/4 on top of it and it would cover the same amount of space. So I could say, oh, well, 1/2 is equal to 2/4. I could do that. But I also, we'll just leave that right there. I also could say, well, what about these eighths? Let's see about covering up the whole space. Let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Look at that, covers up the same amount of space. So over here I could say, all right, 1/2 is equal to 2/4, which is equal to 4/8. 4/8. Well, what about these green ones? Let's see, how many green ones do you think will cover up this space? Look at that. The green one is about half the size. Just think about that. If it took 4 red ones to cover up the space, how many green ones is it going to take to cover up the space? Look at that. I can put 2 green ones on 1 red. So what do you think? There's 2. Whoops. Don't bump it, because then it falls away. There's 2. How about another 2? That makes 4. And another 2. That makes 6. Oh, and then how about 7? And one more? 8. Oh, man, I'm bumping it. It's gonna fall. Oh, but did I cover up the whole space? Almost. Almost. Did I do it? Did I do it? Sort of, kind of. It's kind of falling over. It's almost, there it is. There it is. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of those 16ths. So look at that. 1/2 is equal to 2/4. My 1/2 on the bottom, that big blue one. And then my 2 blues on top of that, that's 2/4. And then my reds, those 4/8. And now my greens, that makes, so look at this. I could say it equals 8/16. Wowzer. Wow. So we have what we call equivalent fractions. Do you see a pattern there? 1, 2, 4, 8. 2, 4, 8, 16. Are those numbers doubling? Maybe you could keep that pattern going.